Hi, welcome to another Alpha Challenge video. In this video, I'll be breaking down some of the top decks that you can be playing to climb to Legend in this pre-Ungoro meta. The idea of this video is to get you to be able to climb from lower ranks into higher ranks. If you're wanting to obviously get to Legend, these are decks that can be helpful in climbing to Legend. The first deck that we're looking at today is Imbue Druid, but if you're wanting to look at any of the other decks, they're in the description with timestamps of decks that you could be using. I've also been putting in the deck codes as well for the decks. With Imbue Druid, you're wanting to start with early game spells, so your 1-mana spells. You're also looking at trying to get your Imbue minions out quite early to be able to get those big golems out. The deck I'm playing against is also another Imbue Druid, so once again, I'm just trying to get those tempo cards out. I'm trying to get my golems as big as possible, and I'm also trying to look for plays where my buddy singer is going quite well, my sing-along buddy, because if you end up getting big Jade Golems out, and your opponent doesn't have a Jade Golem out already, they're obviously going to be a significant disadvantage. Aramidisel, the 4-mana location, is a very powerful card. It applies a lot of pressure towards your opponent. It also allows you to cycle through your cards that previously wasn't available with Imbue Druid. And what you'll see here is I am just trading to make sure that I am going to be able to get a favourable trade next turn. I didn't really want them to go face here because there isn't any particularly beneficial play that I really could do, and my 1-3 would be able to trade well into them anyway. I do have a somewhat decent hand, but once again I am trying to look to get my Jade Golems as big as possible. The fact that they got the Mark of the Wild then does mean that they're going to be able to trade a bit more effectively against me, but I should be able to come out on top in terms of my different draws that I have. I end up using this, the Spark of Life here, just to be able to get another Druid spell. I am obviously hoping to be able to get a way that I can trade quite easily into this board. Getting low cost spells is also quite useful because it means that I'll be able to get bigger Jade Golems out onto my opponent. I end up choosing the Phaser just to be able to deal the extra damage towards them, and then I do end up summoning an extra Golem onto the field, so it does mean that I get a 5/5 down. They're onto their turn 5 as well, so they are sitting in a relatively decent position, but because I'm going to be able to get some extra value coming from my location next turn, it does mean that I will be at a significant advantage compared to what they are. Because of the extra 2 cards and also the extra mana that I'll be getting as well, it does mean that I'll be able to get the bigger board down earlier. The thing that could be potentially troublesome that we'll be seeing shortly is the Zephyrus card that they ended up getting. It's not particularly good for me in terms of that situation. I did obviously get my sing-along buddy as well just then, which is quite good for me, and I also got an Innovate too. I am just going to use the Symbiosis here just to be able to get myself another card. I chose the Twilight Influence just to be able to get the extra spell if I need to. But yeah, then I choose to put the sing-along buddy down. It does mean that I summon 2 extra 5/5s. I could have made it into a 6/6 if I had used the Innovate, but that would have wasted some mana. And if they had something potentially strong, I didn't really want to be dealing with that. They end up using a Wrath here to be able to get the sing-along buddy down to 1 damage. And then fortunately for them, they end up getting the Innovate and the Flame Strike onto my board, so it does mean that they are getting extra mana and extra armor through that. I end up getting the Horn of Plenty, which is decent for me. I end up choosing the Handle with the Bear here, just because it gets me extra taunt minions down, and in this particular matchup, since controlling the board is so important, and also getting your minions down onto the board is so important, that having a taunt means that you can defend yourself against potential clears that they may have onto your bigger golems by them trading into it. So in general, you are going to find that getting these taunt minions will defend you quite easily against what they may have. They end up using their sing-along buddy, so unfortunately I don't have a particularly easy counter for it. I can use the Zephyrs, or I can use the the Grifter, but either way, it's not going to be particularly favourable for me in that situation. I end up using the Zephyrus here just to be able to, and I'll be choosing the deal with my opponent's board one, because I was looking for a ability to be able to clear the 6/6s, and then being able to then clear the 2/4 as well. I end up using my hero, my location to draw some extra cards, and it obviously does get me the extra mana back onto my field as well. And I end up playing down the Grifter here. I am looking for the take control of an enemy minion one because it will be able to deal with their 6/6s, and then I'll be able to get back control onto the field. So I use the 6/6 of theirs to trade into their other 6/6, and then I use the Mark of the Wild onto my Zephyrus here, just because I don't really want them to be able to trade into my Golem that easily, and it means that I'll be able to establish more of a board. So sometimes when you are putting the taunt down, you want to make sure that you're getting it onto a minion that's potentially lower value, but will be able to trade well into whatever they end up doing. And it means that they potentially may not get the play that they want to. They do have the take control of an enemy minion card in their hands. They will be able to use that onto my Zephyrs if they want to be able to then trade and get rid of it for them. They end up obviously using it, and then they do end up trading into my Golem. I don't think that was particularly the best play. The best play would have been taking out the 5/1 with it, but they ended up choosing that, which is fine for them, I guess. I end up silencing the board so I can draw the extra card, and I use the Shadow Word Death on the 8/8. It does mean that I get the extra value that can come from it. I do have the I do end up summoning another Golem down onto the field. Once again, the important part of this match is grinding out your opponent's resources, and what I'm doing right now is I'm looking at how I can best trade into these minions. So I want to deal some face damage, but I also want to make it so my minions aren't going to be easily able to be dealt with by them. So I've made it so if they do end up trading into me, they won't be able to trade efficiently. They'll have to end up doing some sort of unpreferred play for the damage to the board. They end up getting the location active, which does deter my play a little bit. Like, they are going to be able to deal with the most of the minions that I have onto the board, but I will be able to hold a 9/1 on the field, so I am still holding position quite well. And they don't have any more AoEs that they'll be able to deal to my field. They did also have another thing, so they did get a full clear, but I'm once again going to be able to establish tempo of what's going on. And I just summoned down my bear that I had from the previous turn, because obviously it is getting some extra pressure that's there. I don't play down the rush minion here because of the fact that if I am desperate and needing to trade, I will be obviously needing to use that in a future turn, and it's not essential for me at the moment to deal with potential minions that they have. They end up using one of the spells they got from the Spark of Life, and they use the Dreams. They are going to be able to get rid of one of my Jade Golems from the field, and it being a 10 mana minion is obviously a dead card now in my hand, which is a little bit problematic. They play a second Sing-Along Buddy, which is not a particularly great idea. Like, it looks like they're trying to establish a little bit of pressure, but in reality, it's not ideal to be getting the extra Sing-Along Buddy because of the fact that you will be wasting some of that damage, some of that value, because if I end up taking out both of them, they won't have another Sing-Along Buddy for the rest of the game, and I do obviously then get the extra value that comes from it. I end up playing down my Charred Chameleon onto my minion to give it rush. Obviously then it makes it a little bit more powerful to be able to deal with what they potentially may have. I do have another bear as well, so I get the taunt down into the field for it, and I'm just going to be trading into their minions that they have. Getting rid of the Sing-Along Buddies is ideal, and I also get rid of another 12 just in case. And then I'm going to be playing down the Mark of the Wild down onto my 1/2, because once again that is protecting my bigger golems potentially from what they may have. And since they've used the majority of their spells, they don't really have too much more they could potentially do to this board. They potentially could have gotten the Wild God that deals the AoE, but unfortunately for them, they didn't end up getting it, the Demon Hunter one. So they end up just choosing the one that gives the taunt minions. Obviously, it would seem like a relatively ideal play, but they weren't particularly playing around the possibility of me having the 8 mana spell to be able to then obviously AoE their board and also to deal the extra damage. So they play down the Nightmare onto their 5/5, hoping that it will be able to clear it. Hopefully that'll be able to save them for the turn, but unfortunately for them, I do have the 8 mana spell in my hand to be able to deal lethal towards them. So I just play the Nightmare onto my Bear first, and then I use the Ysera Awakens just to be able to clear the board, and then I deal the lethal damage going into them with the golems. So yeah, like the Imbue deck is quite powerful in terms of its, you're looking for the location and it does deal a lot for it, and then obviously getting the extra big size minions. Going into this match, I am playing Death Knight. I'm using the Space Death Knight deck, so it is quite useful against decks that are more aggressive because of the fact that you do have a lot of health that you're able to gain, and with the Starship you also get a lot of value coming from it too. It does have the ability to outgrind decks as well, since you do have the Kill Jaden in it as well, so there is a lot of value that can come from this deck in later turns and later games. Your cards that you're looking at mulliganing, you're trying to get your Starship pieces, so you're trying to get the 3 mana Starship piece, you're also looking for the 5 mana Starship piece, and you're looking for your early game cards as well, so you can get the 4 mana draw card, which is quite powerful. You want to try and link in some of your hero powers to get more of your corpses into your pool, and you'll see that I did just slam down my second Starship piece because it does obviously apply extra value. I don't get any extra thing coming from using the hero power there. I don't want to use the Vampiric Blood. And I just slammed down my Ancient of Yore. I don't want to trade into the 5/5 at the moment because it potentially could be not that great for me. The Blob of Tar obviously is quite a powerful minion in terms of being able to deal with your opponent's aggro cards because of the fact that it does have poisonous. It's quite a sticky minion that can be useful to deal with those mid to late game threats that your opponent may have. There is an interesting Demon Hunter deck as well that's been around that uses the Blob of Tar and the Ravenous Fell Hunter that gets a lot of the Blob of Tars down onto the field, and then you're able to just keep summoning heaps of them, and then obviously getting heaps of those means that you'll be able to deal with your opponent eventually. It also uses the Ball Hogs as well to be able to deal some extra damage, so it seems relatively interesting for it. They end up playing their Oracle down, so the spell damage Druid that's been around is somewhat decent, but a lot of the Legend players that you do come up against, they don't have a particularly strong understanding of being able to use it. It is relatively strong, but it depends on the matches that you are going into. With this deck, with the Death Knight class, you are trying to get as much hank as possible to be able to deal with the big bursts that your opponent could deal, and with the Druid, it is quite possible for them to be able to deal the 50 damage quite easily if they do get decent draws and decent spell damage cards through their different means. They end up playing down the Incendius as well here, so that is once again another card that can quite easily shred through the health total of this deck. And unfortunately for me, I don't have a particularly strong play going into the next turns to be able to deal with a potential Incendius staying onto the field. I draw into the Infested Breath here, which isn't particularly great. I did play the Infestation then knowing that I'd be overdrawing then, but I was hoping to be able to get a way to clear the Incendius because of the fact that I didn't really want it to get extra eruption spell damage increased onto it, because with this spell damage increase happening for the eruptions, it does mean that they can obviously start clearing through more and more of my health total. Having only 52 health is a bit of a scary situation to be in, considering the fact that they are able to deal quite a lot of burst damage with the 7 mana Owlness, or whatever it's called, where they then are able to deal all those burst damage with the Sparkling Flail as well, and then swipes and things. So fortunately for me, they did end up drawing into a few of those eruptions, which then does mean that they're getting less value coming from the Incendious. I play down the Blob of Tar and the Ancient of Yore here. It just means that I draw, it means that I can draw the extra card without overdrawing potentially. And then the Eruption ends up hitting again, so they don't get the extra value coming from it as well. They obviously would have been looking and hoping for it simply because of the fact that the dollhouses that they have onto the field would have given extra damage down onto it too. They end up getting a Mosquito coming through their location, and then they obviously get the extra health and the extra mana. They end up using their swipes as well quite aggressively, which isn't a particularly strong play because of the fact that they won't then be able to burst as easily. So that's probably their biggest mistake that they've had so far in this game. I haven't particularly had a very strong hand to be able to deal with what they've got, but the fact that they gave that to me was quite good for me. I end up choosing the Defense Crystal here because of the fact that it does give me Reborn, and then it will give extra armor as well. In addition to having the Ancient of Yore, it does mean that I'll be able to get the extra value and the extra card without overdrawing. They do have the Dollhouses down in the field. They play down their Owlness, which you generally want to be using with the Sparkling Flail to be able to get the extra reduction happening onto it, so it's not particularly correct how they did that. And the other thing that wasn't correct is if they had the swipes now, they'd be dealing so much more damage and they'd be able to clear this board really easily. So obviously the last turn where they used the swipes was a significant misplay for them. They end up using the Living Roots, which does deal more damage down onto me. But as you can see, if they did have the swipes, or at least one of the swipes, they'd be able to nearly deal lethal coming from that. And they have the flail, so obviously they would have had lethal if they'd used the swipe for it. So it does show that it's important, especially for spell damage decks, that they are thinking about how much damage they're dealing. I do have the Owlness down onto the field at the moment. Like, I have a few options of what I could potentially be doing. I end up opting to play the Exodar and getting the extra armor, although I am leaving the Owl on the field. If they end up getting an eruption onto me, it would be a very bad situation. So I just play down the Wild Pyromancer and then I do the AoE just to heal up a little bit of extra health, in addition to obviously having my Starship piece on the field. And with the Starship piece, it could summon me some of the 12/12s down as well. The Owlness, since they'd used their Living Roots, they'd used their swipes, they'd used their Sparkling Flails, they'd used a lot of those spell damage cards, I wasn't particularly worried about them being able to deal enough damage to me now. So obviously with the 28 armor plus the 13 health that I have here, it does mean that I'm going to be in a significantly favorable position for the rest of the game. So yeah, this deck does have the ability to out armor a lot of decks. But obviously with that Spell Mage deck, that Spell Druid deck, they would have been able to win if they hadn't used the swipes so aggressively. This next deck is Imbue Druid, so Imbue Paladin. So the idea with Imbue Paladin is that you are trying to get the dragons online. You have a few cards in your deck that allow you to draw into the shuffled in Emerald Portals, and then with those Emerald Portals, you're looking generally for like the 5+ mana minions to be able to get decent value coming from them. So you're looking once again for those immune cards, you're looking for the dragon, you're looking for the Bit of Loom Knight, you're looking for the Fluttering Guardian, the Divine Shield one, and obviously the 1 mana spell as well is quite good. And with that, you generally are able to shut down a lot of your opponent's plays. I end up getting the Aegis of Light, so it does mean that my immune card gets a bit bigger, and then I shuffle in the cards and then draw the extra card coming from it as well. It does give me a 2-mana minion, which isn't that powerful, but it means that I'm applying quite a lot of pressure towards my opponent, and with them going into turn 4, it's not particularly that powerful for them. They did play down Blob of Tar, which is a pretty good card because of the fact that it's able to trade quite well into a lot of minions. I end up trading into the 1/2, and then I end up trading my 3/2 into the other card, just because of the fact that I want to make sure that I'm getting extra value coming from this Drake. Like, it would have been decent not doing it in that particular order, but with how I did it, it means that I still have a decent amount of damage sitting on board for a potential damage that could come from them next turn. I end up just hitting into the 5/3 with my weapon, and it does mean that I do have the Drake sitting onto the board. I don't particularly want to trade it into the Fell Hunter, which potentially was a mistake with how I did it, but since I drew into the Dragon as well, it's not too much of an issue, simply because of the fact that I'm able to send those minions into the future, and it means that their board will be quite cluttered going into the later turns as well. Because I can just make it so they have all of the different low cost and low value minions onto the field, and if they end up summoning other minions to their field, they're going to get less value coming from it, which is obviously one of the more powerful effects of the dragon. I end up just trading into the Blob of Tar. It potentially was a mistake not using the 3/2 to trade into the other 1/2. I think I may have missed that when I did that, but either way, it's what I was thinking and considering at that was I was hoping that they'd keep that taunt up onto the field, but ultimately I ended up just not doing that. With the Fell Hunter that they have and the Cubicle, they are getting quite a wide board here, so I'm just going to be dropping the Drake down into the field. The Snoozing Dragon is definitely quite a good card for me as well, because of the fact that it is going to be getting me extra value coming into future turns, and having the 3/5s on the field, having that minion stay on the field through being dormant obviously does give me the extra value. They end up getting 4 Blob of Tars onto the field, so it's a little bit frustrating in terms of that situation, but I do have the Wild God, the Ursel, to be able to get the Flames to go onto the field and just hit into a few of the Blobs of Tars. They will be able to obviously trade into my minions, but it is going to be a little bit difficult for them to be able to get decent trades going into how they did it. So they end up trading all of their Blob of Tars. They potentially made a mistake there by using the other 1/2. They could have had a Blob of Tar with the 2/1, and then obviously have the extra bit sitting inside of it. But yeah, they definitely did make a little bit of a mistake doing it that particular way. But I end up drawing into the Pilot, which is obviously then going to be able to trade well into the minions that they have here. I trade in that particular order to hit the 2-mana Blob of Tar, because it means that they'll send out the Ravenous Hydras, and then it will send out other minions of theirs too. I'm not 100% sure why it did the clear in that particular order without them being able to get extra minions onto the board, but it meant that the Fell Hunter... Actually, I think what happened with it was the Fell Hunter didn't summon. It was the Blob of Tar that summoned first, and then the Fell Hunter didn't have any space to summon anything important, so it meant they didn't have anything. But yeah, the Imbue Paladin is quite a powerful deck to deal with your opponent. The next match I'm using Pain Demon Hunter, so this is slightly different to the Ball Hog Demon Hunters that are being played. It's more of an aggressive deck if you're wanting to climb the ladder really quickly. The idea is you are looking for your 1-drop cards to be able to deal a lot of damage onto your opponent's board. I end up playing down the Brain Masseuse and then also the 1-3 onto the field, it gets me the extra tempo, but it also means that I can use my hero power next turn to deal some more damage to my opponent. And having the Outcast minion on the left means that I can draw an extra card. It's important when you are dealing damage with the Battle Fiend on the field that you are using the hero power or your attack first, and then dealing the damage with it afterwards. I play down the Stapler here. It does mean that I can get the Taunt minion dropping down its cost, while also dealing extra damage to the opponent. They end up getting the RC Rampage onto the field, and I did make a slight mistake here. I should have used the hero power, then Hot Coals, to be able to get the extra damage onto my opponent. And it would have meant that I wouldn't Acupuncture next turn would have been guaranteed lethal, but ultimately it's not too much of a big issue. It did just mean that it delayed the turn a little bit, because now they can just summon the Taunt minion and their charge minion, and they'll be able to deal with this board that I have. But I will also obviously have the Taunt minion coming onto the field too. I'll also have my 3 mana minion too, so there is a decent setup that I have going into the next turn for it. The King Mookler I wasn't playing down on other turns as well, just because I didn't want to give charge to a minion that would then have I didn't want to give bananas to a minion that would have charge, just in case they'd be able to deal lethal to me. They are sitting on 1 health at the moment, so it is quite a simple situation now to be able to deal with them. They use the Cup of Muscle, but unfortunately for them, they're not able to really do too much with that, and then they'll end up just conceding there. So the deck is quite powerful, it's quite quick with your games as well, and yeah, you in general will be able to do quite a bit with that deck. The last deck that we're looking at today is the Aviana Priest. This is gameplay footage from the previous video, but once again it is showing the power of the deck. You're looking at, in this deck, trying to get the Twilight Medium to reduce down the cost of your big cards. Aviana is trying to then change your cost of your cards down to 1. You are using the Alliance spell to be able to get out 2 of the Alliance cards, and with those cards you're looking for Prophet Valen plus the Fireball guy, I forget its name at the moment, and then you can deal a lot of damage coming from your hand, essentially an OTK. Some ideas that you're wanting to think of when you're using this deck: you're wanting to use Tyrande to be able to get the extra spell happening for your champions to Azeroth to get your extra Alliance minions, because if you don't end up hitting the Fireball guy and / or Prophet Valens, you'll end up having a bit of trouble dealing lethal with the cards that you do have in your deck. It is very unlikely to miss every single time for those cards, but you want to increase your likelihood of hitting it as much as possible. I end up drawing into another Twilight Medium, so what I end up making a mistake here. I shouldn't have used the Alliance card. I should have waited until I had Tyrande down onto the field, obviously then to be able to get the extra value. The better play in that situation was more than likely just playing down the Twilight Medium. It would get extra value down onto the field while also making it so my opponent couldn't trade very well. I play down the Priestess here. It gets me the Imbue ready, and I use the Imbue, and I'm going to grab the minion, the Holy Smite, and then get rid of the 1/2 onto the field. It means that they only summon a 0 cost minion because it has 0 attack. And then obviously I get the extra value coming from that. They play down the Husk here, which is a little bit difficult for me to be able to deal with, and they obviously are getting the extra health. So I just play down the Ancient of Yore here. It isn't able to deal with the minions that I have on the field, unfortunately. And obviously with the little sucks, they will take health rather than armor, so I'm not getting the extra value coming from that either. So I just play down the 3 mana, the 3 attack minion, 3 health minion, just to try and stall them a little bit longer. I do have the greater potions in my hand, but obviously it isn't doing too much for me. And I did draw into another Ancient of Yore here as well with the bird watching. Yeah, I did make a little misplay here because I was used to the old Greater Potion of Healing, where it doesn't draw a card, it just plays 4, just costs 4 mana and then heals you for 12, but it apparently does that now, which is fine, I guess. They end up dealing more damage with the Husk minions, but they weren't particularly doing too much with that turn that they had, so I'm not particularly too concerned. And since I did draw the Aviana, it puts me into a relatively decent position going into future turns, especially if they don't end up playing too much down onto their field. They end up using the Morbid Swarm. It's not too much of an issue, they're just getting 1 extra attack onto the field. They use the Wand as well. Once again, it's not really doing anything of concern for me. And they play down the Airlock Breach, so I'm not really too threatened by the cards that they ended up playing down onto the field. I end up using the Shadow Word Ruin to clear their 5/5s, and then I play down the Ancient of Yore, gets me some extra armor onto my field. And what I'm looking for is I'm trying to get the Aviana down onto the field. I'm just looking for a turn where I'm able to play it down without having too much damage being posed. Unfortunately for me, they didn't really do too much that turn, so they're just dealing 5 damage. Plus the Hero Power is 6 damage, which isn't enough to really threaten me. So I just play down the Aviana onto the field, and it will get me set up for my future turns. In 3 turns that I'll be able to deal with them. The Bob the Bartender is very powerful against boards that Death Knight have, because of the fact that they do go quite wide, so you can use it to freeze the board and make it so Death Knight can't really do too much. And yeah, so you're able to essentially stall the next turns that they potentially may have. They end up playing the Morbid Swarm onto the field. It doesn't really do too much, to be honest. I'm sitting in a decent position here. I do want to make sure that I'm not taking too much damage in the next couple of turns, so I play down the Priestess here. It reduces down the damage most of these minions can do, and I play down the Tyrande as well, because of the fact that it will then be able to get the extra value coming from my spells that I have. So I'll be able to get the Champions of Azeroth set up now, and once again I am hoping that I can get the minions that I need. They end up using Threads of Despair, so it does get a full board clear down into the field, and then they play down their Starship piece, so they're not really, once again, threatening too much this turn, so I do have quite an easy choice of things that I can do. I play down my Xavius to be able to get some extra value onto the field. I choose the repackage here just because I want to make it so that if they do go wide, I don't have any sort of threat that I need to worry about. And then I choose the Soothe Fancy at the end rather than the Ceaseless Expanse, because I won't particularly need to deal with a wide board that's there. Because if they had Death Rattles, the repackage is a lot more powerful than the Ceaseless Expanse anyway. They play down the Blizzard, so it just freezes all my minions. Once again, it's not really doing too much for me. And then they use their guys to trade and heal up a little bit more. The Aviana ends up activating now, so I have all my things down to 0 cost. And what I'm trying to do now is I'm trying to get the extra cards reduced out of my hand to be able to get the Champions of Azeroth activated, so I want to get the 4 cards. Fortunately for me, I do end up hitting the Archmage Antonidas and also the Prophet Valens, and then I heal using the Greater Potion to get myself a Fireball, and then if I needed to, I could just keep using Fireballs to be able to deal lethal. But yeah, that's these are some of the top decks currently in Hearthstone for climbing to Legend and in Legend. If you've enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, and bye for now.